Will O'Callaghan is ready for the first time for the official Hurling Power Rankings.
Some of these pundits,
I absolutely adore them lads. I have unbelievable time for them, but they're a great bunch, but it's not acceptable.
They'd like to play the hard man when they're on it. It's not very pleasant when you're trying to manage a team. All you're looking for is a bit of civility and a bit of decency, but they just miss you like you know, you have nothing to do with the bloody occasion.
Well, good morning to you.
Morning, lads. I worry when I hear the forward cell saying these are going to be controversial. So obviously you've already had a look at the graphics.
Are you really ready for what you're getting into? It's a lifetime of pain. We call them the power rankings, but they're pain rankings for you who creates them and for Owen. Like, Owen does not go out anymore, except in Japan where he's recognised as a YouTuber, but he doesn't go out anymore without being recognised as the idiot behind the power rankings or the
people. There was a little boy came up to me in the street earlier on this week, and he was like, "Hey, aren't you Owen Sheehan? You're the boy who does the official power rankings. Your power rankings are so correct, man. I've always looked at them and thought that they are absolutely spot on. You're my hero." And then I signed like an Antrim jersey or something like that.
Excellent.
Definitely something we can file under. That definitely happened.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm sorry for your trouble. I'm delighted you're doing this, but you're a madman. You are, for stepping into it in the first place, and then secondly for your power rankings. So let's get going, right?
Yeah. Well, okay, yeah. Let's get going. Let's start with the. Let's start with. We start at the bottom, Will.
Yeah, we'll go from the bottom up. So
okay.
I've gone with 12 teams.
What?
So essentially, it's the Liam McCarthy team.
There's 12 counties in Ireland, are there?
Well, look, this would have been awkward if I started to go down and started mixing divisions, and then we're looking at 3 different tiered competitions. Again, it's where it's slightly different to football. So the 3 teams who are probably unlucky not to be in the top 12 and who are probably just outside it would be Kerry, I think, are just behind Westmeath, who are my number 12. And then I think you'd have Offaly and Carlow just behind them. Offaly will operate in Division 1 of the league this year, but they only won the third flight championship last season and will probably be considered the third favourites to win the Joe McDonagh Cup this year. And Carlow, just as a consistent Joe McDonagh Cup team, and a team who very recently were operating in Division 1 and the Liam McCarthy just outside the top 12. But I think Kerry are the next best currently, and that's not just based on their win against Tipperary in the Munster Hurling League. I think Kerry have been showing kind of consistent performance level just outside the Liam McCarthy and lost the Joe McDonagh Cup last year. Westmeath coming up into the Liam McCarthy Championship again for next season, having very impressively won the Joe McDonagh Cup, go in at number 12. Antrim, who they replace in the top flight championship, who got into the Joe McDonagh, are in 11th. They'll be expected to bounce back this year from the McDonagh Championship. And I think you have to have Laois just above them in number 10, because Laois beat Antrim in the most meaningful fixture for both counties last year to stay in the Liam McCarthy Championship. This is the 11th year in a row that Laois are going to operate in Division 1 of the Hurling League. So while I think there's a gap between these bottom 3 teams and the sides we're going to talk about just above them, I think that's a pretty fair ranking of the 3 teams who just make the top 12.
Yeah, and I think people who are watching this on YouTube will see that there's big controversy coming there at number 9. But let's just go back a little bit. Like, first of all, there was Michael Dignan having a pop off Kerry hurling for, going for players that happen to be essentially from Kerry because their parents are from Kerry. That was a weird thing to go after Kerry for. And then second of all, you've got Will O'Callaghan just deciding that they don't merit near inclusion in the hurling rankings. This is a beef that's developing between Kerry and Offaly. It seems, Will, that's you sparked 1982 all over again.
Despite the kind words I just gave about Stephen Malumphey's side beating Tipperary in the Munster Hurling Cup a few weeks ago, yeah, look, until Kerry get up into the Liam McCarthy Championship, and I'm one of the firm believers in hurling circles that if they were to get promoted from the Joe McDonagh, they should go into the Munster Championship. I don't like the fact that Antrim and Kerry go into Leinster as an effective divisional development championship each summer, but that's the way that the structures are, and I think Kerry have got a very good chance of winning the Joe McDonagh this year. I think Antrim are probably just a notch above them, which is why Antrim are inside the top 12. But I think Kerry definitely are the team who I'd have in 13th at the moment. And yeah, maybe that moves us on nicely to number 9.
Hang on. And cold comfort to the people of Kerry who no longer exist, that hurling fraternity who no longer exists, isn't it John Myler who's in charge of the intermediate team?
Kilmiley.
Yeah. So they don't exist. You're telling David Myler that all the work that his dad puts in, poof, gone. It's a bottle of smoke.
With O'Callaghan as troops. Arsenal or Kerry are
all these
extinct.
guys who are involved in pushing hurling in the kingdom can put my words on the dressing room and say, look, let's get ourselves inside the top 12.
I realise it's obviously, because these are chiselled in granite, it's very difficult to just have written 13 Kerry, 14 whoever, 15. It would have been hours and hours and hours of work not to inflame the war. But with Kerry who they take this stuff well, Will. Notoriously they've laid down in the face of insults in the past. So I wish you well. I wish your mentions well. I wish your future trips to the kingdom well. Make sure you holiday in Donegal next summer. Let's move on to number 9, because this is it. This is it. Who's your number 9 team?
Number 9 are Galway, and this is exactly what Henry Shefflin has taken over from. He has come into a team who are the great underperformers from last summer. They were very comfortably beaten by Dublin in the championship. They exited pretty meekly in the qualifiers when they played against Waterford as well. It was a miserable summer on the back of a year where so much was expected of Galway. And people were talking them up as potential contenders against Limerick as well because of the way that they match up against the All-Ireland champions physically. But Galway did not get back to the level that they were in previous years. And as a result, I think they're the team who've made the slide down to the lowest of the contenders for the All-Ireland Championship. Now, that comes with the caveat that if they have a good year, they can definitely storm back up this leaderboard and potentially get back into the top 4. An expectation in Galway will be that they'll be competing back as an All-Ireland semi-final team. But a bit like Owen with the football rankings last week, I think you have to base this on championship form from last year. And if you do so, Galway are below the teams that we're going to look at in the next slide. So as a result, Galway have to start the year in 9th place, and with plenty of question marks about them. I mean, no Joe Canning for this season. We'll see how the rebuild goes. And last week, and I'm not taking pre-season form a huge amount into account, but an experimental Galway team were beaten quite comprehensively by Dublin last Sunday, which would indicate that Galway still have a little bit to do to close that gap again.
Yeah, a lot of their best players aren't available for them at the moment for various reasons. The one thing I would say is that last year's championship was obviously a weird, anachronistic, COVID shortened, and therefore I don't know if we can read as much into it as we should do. The core of this Galway team are All-Ireland winners. They legitimately have been up the steps. But
is that core group, Ger, coming to a close now at this stage? And are they ushering in new players? Is there another kick in some of those players who were around in 2017? These are the question marks about Galway going into this year. I genuinely think that they've got potential to be a top 4 team when we're talking about the hurling rankings at the end of this year. But right now, I think you have to view them as below the teams who are in the middle tier that we're going to talk about in a moment.
So, is it too much of a jump then to suggest that Galway can become the team best poised to take the crown off Limerick, or do you think that it's almost a year, 2 years to get themselves into the top of the middle pack again before we can even say that? Because that has been said. That has been one of the things that's been said about this Galway team.
That's the question mark, Owen, isn't it? I mean, the benefit that they're going to get Galway is that when we go back to the Leinster Championship, which will be in a round robin series, it's less likely that they'll have a one-off poor performance, say.
Oh, the Kerry lads are already on Will's. They've cut the line. Will, get out quick.
They really have. I've never seen that icon before.
Wow, is he all right?
That is definitely the icon of severe peril.
Yeah,
that is peril for. I mean, I guess it's hard to just nail these I wouldn't know anything about not nailing the rankings, obviously, but Will has obviously fell victim to not nailing it. Number
9, the 9th best team in the country being Galway. It'd be interesting to get Scales' take on this. He might be like, yeah, it's true. It's tough love. Yeah. Or it's like, what?
In fairness, Will does make a valid point that Henry Shefflin has been brought in for a reason. There's a reason why they had to change things up in the aftermath of last season, and they are at a pretty low ebb. They have just lost one of their best ever players. There are reasons why Galway are in a lowly place, but it just feels that there's so much hype around them that surely the hype can't be wrong. Hype is always right, isn't it? The hype that Galway, they're the number 2 hyped county in the country right now. Surely that can't be mistaken, can it?
Well, I think that we're underrating the potential. I think that you've got to add in. So what Will has done is he's looked at last year's results and gone, there's my matrix, away we go. Things have changed. Mm-hmm. There's been a significant change in Galway since then. Right? This giant hurling brain, this inspirational totemic figure has arrived. I mean, I know I've been giving out about messiahs all morning and for months and months and months, but this might be a literal hurling messiah. Like, this might actually be the hurling messiah who has arrived. And as atheistic as I am about most things, when he brandishes the hurl in the dressing room before they go out up to the skies, and when the lightning strikes, I won't be surprised. I won't be surprised if it's a summer of lightning.
Whenever you say like a giant hurling brain, all I can think of is it Krang, the guy from Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, just a guy with brain in his belly going around holding a hurley. That's what I imagine Henry Shefflin to be when you describe him as a massive hurling brain.
Well, it might be, you know.
It's going to be fascinating. Like the thing is, you just sort of wish that Limerick weren't as good as they are, because this could genuinely be set up to be one of these crazy kind of like 1990s hurling seasons where anything can happen.
Yeah, but it might be, because there's a possibility that Limerick don't reach the same robotic levels of genius that they've had. Like, we all, because of the recovery, have forgotten about what happened in the Tip game last year in that first half. Like, if the sending off happens, do they recover? I'm not sure. It would have been different. Like, anyway, Will is back. The backup generators kicked in.
Someone in Galway possibly pulled the Skype line at me while I was in the middle of making an argument as to why they should be in ninth place. But sorry about that.
I don't know if you missed my Messiah thing, but basically the hurling Messiah has arrived in Galway, and so you have not factored in that things have changed from last season. Things have changed. Last season's results, I guarantee and I agree, should hold some weight. But in the meantime, new information came to light.
Yeah, look, here's the thing. We haven't seen enough of Galway under Henry Shefflin so far. I watched their game against Offaly in the Walsh Cup a couple of weekends ago, and they played a very nice style of hurling. It would appear, based on the way they played, and obviously Henry Shefflin has only had limited time with them so far, that they are going to hurl in a style that's not too dissimilar to how he played with Ballyhale Shamrocks. And given that Galway have got plenty of big physical players, both in their half-back line and in their forwards, they're going to be well able to win their own ball. And to that reason, I think, just as I got cut off on Skype a few moments ago, I think they are a team you consider could put it up to Limerick in the All-Ireland Championship as a result. I mean, Tipperary fans, no doubt, and we'll talk about them in a moment and the changes that they've made, will feel that in the first half of the final in Munster last year, that maybe they showed that they're the closest to Limerick's level, but let them off the hook in the second half. Or you could argue the way that Limerick were just able to step up a level. But Galway showed in an All-Ireland semi-final 2 years ago that they were able to go toe-to-toe with Limerick. And if it wasn't for the injuries they picked up in that semi, it could have been a different result.
Yeah,
and that's why I reckon Galway won't be finishing the year in ninth place. I'd be shocked if they're that low by the end of it.
Okay, maybe today I accept that that's where they are, but I think that they're actually 3, to be honest. Let's go. Let's look at the first page, because I think here there's going to be some issues too.
Okay, go on. Where are we taking issue with the way that we move into the
I'll go from 8 to 1. 8 is Wexford, 7 is Dublin, 6 is Clare, 5 is Tip, 4 is Kilkenny, 3 is Cork, 2 is Waterford, and 1 is Limerick. So Wexford at 8.
Do you want to start with why Dublin are just ahead of Wexford then? Is probably the easiest way to do this, I think. So Dublin got to the Leinster final last year, put in that performance against Galway to qualify for the final. I think they were a bit disappointing against Kilkenny in the decider itself, while Wexford ran Kilkenny incredibly close and won the best games in the championship last year, the one that went to extra time. But I think Dublin, given what they did last summer, have to be considered just above Wexford as a result. Wexford, I think, are interesting because just looking at their team sheets, even in the first couple of games in the post-Davy Fitzgerald era, some of those young players who were coming through that maybe didn't get a massive chance last year, where they were trying to go with the core group that won a Leinster Championship to try and repeat the trick again, that maybe there might be a little bit of change there. Obviously, there's been a huge change in management and with the backroom team as well. So I think Wexford will probably end up going ahead of Dublin in these rankings, but at the moment I think you have to consider Dublin to be slightly ahead. The only problem is that Dublin, after the Galway game last year, and they had a fairly comprehensive victory against Antrim in the first round in Leinster as well, didn't really back it up in the Leinster final or when they were knocked out in the All-Ireland quarter-final. So the trick from Matty Kenny's side is to build on that display against Galway last year and show they can do so consistently this season. But they're still going to be operating top flight of the league and will have aspirations of getting back to a Leinster final again. One wonders, is there a bit of a chewy middle in the Leinster Championship as well? You know, given that Wexford were able to win it a couple of years ago, given that Dublin were able to get to the final in the year just gone by, when we go back to the standard format, will it be a case of Galway and Kilkenny rising to the top within the province again? that remains to be
Yes.
seen. But right now, I think you'd have to see Dublin as best of the rest in Leinster right now, which is why they're just ahead of Wexford, if that makes sense.
Look, again, I think you're overrating last season versus what we've known historically, and I would say I'm very interested to see what Darragh Egan is going to do in Wexford.
Well, in fairness, I would absolutely back the decision to use last year rather than some sort of historical tendency as to what actually happens in Limerick. What I want to, or in hurling in general, what I want to know is how much stock are you putting in to the 19-point win for Dublin last weekend against Galway? Like, is that actually informing your decision making?
Yeah, see, I'm not sure. I mean, we obviously spoke about this from a Galway perspective a moment ago, where they'll say that they had a very experimental team out. I mean, Dublin will have to be very happy to have opened their year in that fashion, and they'll be looking to back that up when they play against Offaly this Sunday as well.
It doesn't matter.
If they do so,
yeah,
it doesn't matter. These don't matter. No.
The only thing is, lads, there's a very short run into the hurling league this year because of the way that the year has gone. So teams, with the exception of maybe Kilkenny, who went extremely experimental last week, have been trying out systems and have been trying out players to be ready for a league getting underway. And for Dublin, the key thing is for them to stay in Division 1 after that. So I think for some counties, the end of these pre-season competitions take on a little bit more importance than others.
Okay, we need to horse through these now. Let's. Can I get the graphic back up for a second? Clare in 6. Okay, Tip in 5. I mean, I don't think
Tipper on the slide, and obviously, look, for this year,
that's the headline. Has now come in. Tipper on the slide.
There's no Brendan Maher going into this season. There's talk about Pádraig Maher potentially playing in the forwards when he's been one of the best halfbacks of his generation, which I think is an interesting experiment, but you're taken away from your half-back line. Like, look, Liam Sheedy last year went with a group of players in 2019 who won an All-Ireland Championship. He stayed faithful to them. All year, friends of mine in Tipperary were saying, why are they not using the players who've come through the underage system and have been so successful and shown so much potential, but maybe didn't get the game time that it was felt was deserved last year? So if Colin Bonner comes in and mixes things up, I mean, already Bubbles is not going to be part of the panel. Like, as West Ham fans will tell you, no Bubbles, no party. Like, I cannot believe that there's better forwards in Tipperary. That means that Bubbles.
But maybe he's not fit enough. Maybe he's not fit enough.
He's had an injury, but I still can't believe he wouldn't make the league squad.
New management comes in and decides to turn things over, doing exactly what the Tip fans in your life have been telling you, and you're like, no, we can't be doing this. I would still have. For what it's worth, it's for me it's Limerick, and then it's like a B spot where there's a tree group, and I don't have Cork in that. I have Galway, Tip, and just about Kilkenny clinging to there. That's for me. And then after that, I think, how are Waterford here? Like, what? Prove to me, Waterford, that you're not just going to at some point collapse.
Well, look, I think here's the thing for Waterford, and the best pre-Christmas present they could ever have got was that Liam Cahill decided not to go back to Tipperary and stay with Waterford for next season. He got them to an All-Ireland final 2 years ago. They went to an All-Ireland semi-final last year, albeit Limerick destroyed everyone once they got over that first half performance in the Munster Championship. So as a result, I don't think you can put Cork ahead of Waterford, despite the fact that Cork got to an All-Ireland final, because of the fact that Waterford have backed it up with 2 good championship years now in a row. And I think Waterford have to have aspirations of getting to at least an All-Ireland semi-final this year, which is why I think they're rightly in second place. I think you have to put Cork, out of respect for what they achieved last year, albeit they're on the longest run without lifting the Liam McCarthy now at this stage. And questions persist about Cork when you see what happened in the All-Ireland final last season. Like, they're so incredibly entertaining to watch. They've got so much firepower in the forward line. In Patrick Horgan, they've got maybe one of the best players never to win an All-Ireland Championship, and it'll be a horrible shame if he was to end without having a Celtic cross at the end of his career. But I'm just not sure if you would back Cork to overcome Limerick or even to overcome Waterford on the current standings. But you have to respect the fact that they got to an All-Ireland final last season. Kilkenny, this is the longest run. You talk about Cork's barren run. It's the longest run that Kilkenny have ever had under Cody without winning an All-Ireland title. It's gone to 7 seasons now at this stage, and it goes back to Kilkenny's drought at the end of the 90s and over when he took over. 24th season that he's now facing into now. He's without a few of his key generals, and like already announced that Colin Fennelly's not going to be playing inter-county hurling this year. Joey Holden's not going to be playing inter-county hurling. But for anyone who watches Ballyhale playing against St Thomas this weekend, they've got 2 of the last young hurlers of the year coming through. So even as those players start to exit stage left, there's still remarkable talent coming through in Kilkenny. And you can't argue about the fact that Cody's Kilkenny have been able to win a lot of tight games over the last few years. I think back about the Galway Leinster final in 2020. I think about that Wexford game last year. Kilkenny have got an ability to beat the teams around them, including beating Limerick in 2019. So for that reason, I think you have to have Kilkenny within the top 4.
Okay, so it's Kilkenny 4, Cork 3, Waterford 2, Limerick 1, and there's no point in talking about Limerick at this stage because they're so far ahead. We will obviously get into more detail about how they might be taken down the way we used to do with Dublin. What do you do about a problem with Limerick? Because obviously everybody's obsessed with it. No thoughts about maybe moving Clare up or down? They're kind of 6th at the moment. That's about right.
Yeah, I think that's about right. I think they could go anywhere between 6 and 4, depending on how the year pans out. Again, I thought Clare actually had a pretty good summer under Brian Lowell last season. Good to see that he's staying around. Clare have had plenty of off-field problems and disputes over the last while, but it seems that their group of players are very tightly knit together. They've really got behind that management team. They'll get a bit of a run out this week against the All-Ireland champions Limerick at the weekend in Ennis in the Munster Hurling Cup final, and then it's focused very much on the league for Clare after that. Again, keeping Tony Kelly fit is going to be so key. Like when they lost out to Waterford last year, it was so largely down to the fact that Tony Kelly was injured. He is their Superman within the panel, and
Duggan's back.
He's got the ability to win big games for them.
Look, anyway, Will, RIP your mentions is all I can say.
I'm already worried about Galway and Tipperary friends having to go at me already. This is the problem when you live close to the border to these two counties.
Tip are on the slide is the headline. Niall on YouTube says, are you really putting Galway number 9? Is this trying to be controversial? Nobody could actually think they're outside the top 5. Well, Will has given you his reasons, Niall. Daisha Dude says Galway are always overhyped, but 9th is bananas. And Cassius King says, based on last year's championship, they deserve to be number 9, which is exactly Will's argument here.
Thanks a lot, Cassius.
Patrick Hickey says, did Galway not get battered by Dublin? Galway have loads of underage and failure has been tagged to Galway for years. Won All-Ireland since 88 shows. Daisha Dude says, maybe Limerick are first and Galway, Waterford, Tip, Kilkenny and Cork are joint second. Thin partitions. I think that's probably about right, and you could actually tack on Clare on most days, having some sense that they might be able to beat those teams. And for the rest, let's wait and see. You can't have Tip over Waterford. Tipper on the slide. Big time, says Shane, echoing your words. That might be your burner account. And the Unk says, Limerick will stroll to get another All-Ireland. Everyone else should be fighting for number 2 status. Waterford will crumble on the big stage as per. Hurling folk hate each other. It's great. And they're never...
It's not the concern about Limerick here as well, though. That it's like Limerick are going to have to be pushed to bring themselves to that level again, because they've had 4 years of just so much success now at this stage. And like, it sounds like a cliche that Limerick might beat themselves by not being able to stay at that level for a long period of time.
I think we'll certainly be looking for signs of that in the league.
Those comments there suggest to me that this country will be a very, very dangerous place if more than 12 counties played hurling.
Well, it's lucky they don't. Peter M says, Ger needs to let go of Larry Tompkins like it was the 80s. He hates Cork, no matter what sport it is. I know, this particular iteration of the Cork hurlers are very acceptable. Well... That is this week's Power Rankings.
Thanks, lads.
I absolutely adore them lads. I have unbelievable time for them, but they're a great bunch, but it's not acceptable.
I do love the Cork hurlers, by the way, all of them, all the way back.